Hi, I'm Chris McBrien, a Gen Xer, and the pop culture from my generation is awesome.
And I'm Yancy Eaton, a millennial, and the pop culture from my generation is dope.
Episode 71, The Princess Bride Movie Review. Hey, Chris McBrien here, along with Yancy Eaton. As always, this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. I'm representing Generation X, and the millennial is Yancy. What's going on, my friend?
Present. What's up, Chris?
Oh, man, I'm doing well. How about you?
Just the same old stuff, man, every single day. I'm trying to make your editing process easy tonight, so I'll abstain from the profanity. But just another difficult day as a middle manager at a brick and mortar retail store. But I'm honestly happy to do the show tonight. I'm happy
Good.
that we're kind of getting back on a normal schedule. We recorded last week. We're recording this week. It's just the continuity is back, getting back into the flow of things. It feels pretty good. What about you?
Oh, man, I love doing this show. I love doing it with you. I'm sitting here having a nice cold beverage and talking to my friend about pop culture. What could be better? I want to mention if anyone wants to reach out to us on Twitter, you can reach us at Yancy Eaton or at C. McBrien. Or, of course, you can always go to popgoesyourworld.com. Find all of our contact information there. For me, I wanted to touch base on a TV show. So, as you know, I'm trying to do more and more kind of millennial type shows, into my life. And so one of the ones that I started watching, I didn't watch it right from the beginning, but I was watching The Walking Dead. So my wife and I would watch it like every week, right? And we got really into it and watching the show, and it's really great. And I don't know how anyone feels about this, so I just kind of threw it out there. I was really into it. Like, season 1 was so good. And then season 2, watching it, and then there's like The Governor and season 3 and all that stuff. And it's really, really cool watching it. And then what they do is, like a lot of shows, Lost started doing this back, 10 years ago or whatever, where they would do a mid-season hiatus. Like, they do like 6 or 7 episodes and then take a break and then come back. And The Walking Dead does this, I think, pretty much every year that I've watched it. And the interesting thing is, I don't know if you watch a show, we'll talk about that in a second, but we got to the hiatus, I guess, and then it came back, and both my wife and I didn't even noticed that it came back. And then we kind of talked, and we're like, oh yeah, Walking Dead's supposed to be back. And I go and look it up online, and I find out there's like 7 episodes that we missed. And we both looked at each other and said, I really don't care. I don't want to watch this show anymore. We both have lost interest in the show. So it's kind of sad, because it's a show that it was like appointment viewing for us. Every week we'd watch The Walking Dead, and we liked it so much. And now we just don't even care anymore. So I don't know how anyone else feels. I've completely lost all interest in The Walking Dead. And that's too bad, because I used to like that show a lot.
Well, I mean, I also used to watch it, and it was kind of appointment viewing too, where I was a little late, but then I caught up, and I was just waiting, like, oh my god, I cannot wait for The Walking Dead. And I was watching the Talking Dead show afterwards.
Oh yeah, we did that too.
Commentary and fan theories and all this stuff. And like you said, I thought the first season was extremely good. I thought the premise was really cool. Obviously the zombies look fantastic, and there was a ton of hype and like buzz around the show. And very quickly after, I think I got to season 3, I just realized, like, I don't care. Like, I literally do not care. This is the most like unredeeming. It's just the same stuff over and over again. Like, how many times can a person be killed by a zombie, and in how many different creative ways? Like, that essentially became what the show was about as they, slowly started killing off characters. And, I'm not going to give any spoilers or anything like that, but I checked out after season 3, and it's just like, it's the most unredeeming. Like I said, there's no payoff for me watching that show. It's literally just like, hey, let's watch people die. And the writing kind of took like a serious hit. It stopped making sense, and I stopped caring. But I mean, good on you for at least trying.
Yeah, I will say this, because I always chime in with my Gen X take on things. So here's the thing. If you watched The Walking Dead, kind of like if you watched The Walking Dead and kind of gave up on it, and I would like to steer you toward a Gen X thing that is a zombie movie that is like a bazillion times better than The Walking Dead. And that is Night of the Living Dead from 1968. George A. Romero's first film was Night of the Living Dead, black and white movie, low budget, made it on about 30 grand outside of Pittsburgh. Man, oh man, is it good. It might be a little shocking if you were to watch it today as a millennial, because you're so used to, the blood and the gore and, the special effects and all the complex storylines and stuff that are going on with The Walking Dead. This is very, very, very simplistic. For whatever reason, it never is actually ever established in the movie. people start rising from the graves and as zombies and start going around, and these people get trapped in a farmhouse. And the whole premise of the movie is that the battles aren't with the zombies as much as they are with the people inside the house. And it's just a wonderful premise. And like I say, low budget, black humor in it and stuff like that. But, oh, God, is that good. So I would implore anybody that has watched The Walking Dead and gotten sick of it, like yourself, and maybe I'll make you do this on a future podcast because that's what we do around here, but go and watch Night of the Living Dead from 1968, George A. Romero's classic, and I think you'll be really happy with it, I hope. Or you might think I'm crazy. I don't know. But anyway, you want to get to our movie here, Yancy?
Yeah, man, let's do it.
All right, here we go.
I didn't see it back in 1984, obviously, because I wasn't born.
There was basically one way for young teenage boys to see boobs.
Oh, my.
Chris, this is a hard endorse.
Millennials can see boobs whenever they want.
My least favorite movie that you have recommended for me to watch.
The Love Boat.
A movie that did not age particularly well.
Back in the 70s and 80s, Yancy.
Frontal nudity.
There was not the same level of grooming and hygiene that exists now.
Or topless women.
Oh, yeah, that's my uncle up there.
I am so proud of you.
Thank you. I think maybe I should try and watch a millennial show. Okay, so this week I made you watch a Gen X, classic, I guess, for lack of a better term, and that is 1987's The Princess Bride. So I've quoted it many times. We were talking about it on the show previously, and you were like, I've never seen that movie. So I said, okay, you got to watch it. So I finally made you watch it. And one of the best things about this podcast, Yancy, is the fact that you get to watch lots of things that you never did see. And I get to watch lots of things from your generation I've never seen. So I made you watch The Princess Bride. What are your first takeaways on it?
I really enjoyed it a lot, and I'm trying to think of just really clever ways to describe how much I enjoyed it. It flew by. I think it was like an hour and 40 minutes of runtime, but man, it was I was just so into it. I'm speaking in such a simplistic way because I was just in awe of how much I enjoyed it and how simple it was, how simple the characters were. But how really clever and just poignant the dialogue was between them, how believable the love story itself was. Just, I was almost blown away. As soon as the movie was over, I'm like, wow, that was almost like a tour de force where the acting and the dialogue was it was the most important thing in the entire, everything else was just background noise, and it was obviously a love story between two main characters, but all of the complementary pieces to it just worked so well. I was really blown away. This is one of those films where I have heard it referenced a million times, and I've heard, you killed my father, prepare to die. I've heard that, countless times, and I've even seen it referenced in other, pieces of pop culture, and I didn't know what it was from, and so many different other lines in this movie. And then just my brain just constantly turning over and over again as it was just a really charming, endearing movie that I was not expecting to enjoy nearly as much as I did.
Yeah, I agree. I think charming comes to mind when I think of it. First of all, I'm really, really, I just want to start out by saying I'm really glad that you like this movie because I had talked to some other friends behind the scenes before we went to this show. And I said, and I said this to my wife tonight too. I said, if I go on the air tonight with Yancy and he says he doesn't like The Princess Bride, we're breaking up.
It's over.
That's it. But I'm really glad because the thing is, I do believe that it is a very, very charming film. I think, as far as I'm concerned, this movie has something for everyone. And I think that's what I like about it. If you want monsters, you got it. You want sword play, you got it. You want action, it's in there. You want humor, totally there. And you want a love story, like you mentioned, you got it. And it's so funny, like you said, the love story is the kind of the sort of what grounds the whole movie, right? And why does it work so well? Of course, because it's true love. You think this happens every day, is like a line from the movie, right?
That's enough just because that's the explanation, because it's true love, of course.
It's true love. And even when he gets to Miracle Max, it's like, why should I save this guy? Why should I? True love. Remember when he puts the bellows in his mouth and it's like true love. Oh, is he saying true laugh? True laugh? No, it's true. And his wife comes out. It's true love. You got to save him. True love doesn't happen every day. It's just so cool. So you sort of described it as the backdrop of the movie was the love story. But you know what I loved about this movie? The fact that to me, the backdrop of the movie is a grandfather reading a story to his grandson. And I think it's just perfect. Because as I was mentioning to you on a previous show, I watched this movie with my son. And his reaction mirrored Fred Savage. Because, we start watching the movie and he's like, oh, this is all about kissing. This is like a love story. It was exactly like the little kid in the story, right? And then there's the shrieking eagles and the swords, and there's fighting in the fire swamp and quicksand and on and on and on. And, you know, then he really started to come around. There is a lot to like in this movie. Like I said, I think there's something for everyone. And I think if you watch this movie and you come away from it kind of with a feeling like, well, there wasn't really anything in that movie for me, then I just don't think you're watching it close enough. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's something for everybody in this movie.
I completely agree. Namely, let's jump right into it and just start talking about Robin Wright for just a second. Okay.
Yes.
Obviously, Robin Wright
I think it's her first movie, wasn't it?
I don't even know that, to be honest with you. All I know is that, you know, she's played a lot of different roles. She was, you know, most famously probably, I think, in House of Cards, as far as like recent films. She was in Wonder Woman, you know, like a really strong female character kind of thing. It's really like, I'm trying to talk about, I wrote notes tonight basically saying, like, I'm going to give her a lot of credit for her acting and how well she plays this part and how she's able to emanate, like, you know, being vulnerable and being strong, and like, kudos to the writers in this movie for being able to like to develop her character so quickly. Like, that whole love story was basically a montage that lasted like 2 or 3 minutes. That gives you the whole setup of the entire relationship between the two of them, and they throw it at you in just a matter of minutes, and you're instantly caring about it. I instantly care about it. We're invested in, like, it's a believable romance between the two of them. And Robin Wright sells it so well. And I'm not just trying to talk about her physical appearance, but good Lord, is she one of the most beautiful women I have ever seen in my life in this film. I've never seen a movie with her that age, which is, you know, I assume was in her 20s at some point, you know, roughly around my age. Breathtakingly beautiful, and absolutely sells it on camera. Like, she looks like a princess. She acts like an absolute, I don't know how else to explain it. Like, I'm a little just like awestruck of like how much she captivated the screen, and then hearing stuff about how she was actually like one of the last people to actually take on the part, like one of the last people to join the film. It was really crazy because there's so many different pieces to this where you heard like, oh, this actor was going to take this part, or this person, or this was our 4th or 5th choice, and just how it all comes together and every single character works. I mean, what do you think of Robin Wright as kind of like the lead in this? And I mean, I can't think of a single critique that I had of hers. I thought her whole performance was just absolutely incredible.
I gotta agree with you. So I think she was 21 years old when she did this movie. It was really her first movie role. She was in Hollywood Vice Squad before that, really small part. So this was her movie, you know, debut for all intents and purposes. And yeah, she was just perfect. Like, she brought everything. Like, this is the thing, is that what takes a movie to a different level are the performances of the actors and what they put into the roles. And we've talked about that before. Like, we talked about Contact last week. One of the things I didn't like about it was I felt it was miscast. I didn't think those actors were right for those roles. Whereas in this movie, every single character, right down to the smallest bit part, are all absolutely brilliantly cast. Like, every character in this movie is brilliantly cast, starting with her. So you're right. She's absolutely beautiful, but she's vulnerable, but she's strong. She's not your typical just damsel in distress. Like she has a lot of vulnerability, and she believes in true love. You know, she's
and just to
life.
interject, but
Yeah.
like I said, to interject with no backstory whatsoever, she is a fully developed character. Like you said, strong, but also like extremely vulnerable. Like you get all these different sides to her. Like, you see, like, as they're walking through the fire swamp or whatever it's called. Yeah. Like, the looks that she gives him as he's being like, you know, he has like this false bravado, like this cockiness, this air to him. Just the looks that she gives him that says like, okay, like, yes, you know, you're my true love, but you're also like annoying the piss out of me. You know what I mean? Like, she's just, all the characters are so developed. Like, remember when we reviewed Indiana Jones together, and I did like the film, but like,
Raiders
I was
of
a
the
little
Lost
critical.
Ark. Raiders of the
Lost Ark, Indiana Jones, and whatever.
No,
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's later. That's millennial crap. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's that whole Star Wars Episode 4 crap creeping in from the millennials. Okay. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Fair enough. We're not gonna talk about it all.
I'm an old man yelling at a cloud. Just leave me alone.
Right. But like, you know, I was able to say I liked elements of that film. I liked certain actors, but like there were parts in the casting where like it was such a distraction to me that I was almost like pulled away from the movie. Whereas with this, I fell in love with every single character individually, and I was just transfixed by it. And just the way that they pace this movie, how they set it up so quickly so that you can actually get into the development and actually start pushing the plot along. And there's not like this whole this, you know, unnecessary buildup. I just thought it was really, really well done.
Yep, right from the get-go, it starts off, you know, yeah, like you said, it's almost done in montage form that, you know, she falls in love with Wesley, and then he is, you know, taken away and killed by the Dread Pirate Roberts. And it's like right from the get-go, and she's like, I'll never love again. And it just sets up the movie, right? My big takeaway from this movie is that and we do this a lot, like both me and you, and I think people in general, we tend to put movies into categories, right? You got a romantic comedy, there's an action movie, you know, horror movies, historical dramas, fantasy film, love stories even. But this movie is all of them rolled into one. And very rarely do you find that. Like, movies are made in particular genres. They just are. And you don't have too much crossover. You know, you see some dramedies and stuff like that, but this movie, like I said, it goes back to what I said, there's something for everyone, because it's all the movie genres rolled into one, like never before, I don't think, or even has ever been done since quite the same way. You know, and that's one of the things that I think I like about the movie so much. But yeah, to go back to your part, some of the casting in it, oh my gosh, so good. So some of these characters, and it's really hard for me. I think this movie is one of the toughest movies for me to actually nail it down and go, that's my favorite character. Mm-hmm. You know, like, because I would say, well, Inigo Montoya, that's my favorite character. Well, actually, hold on a second. Vizzini's my favorite character. Man, he's funny. Oh, wait a minute. No, Fezzik's. Oh, it's so hard. They're all so good. Miracle Max is so, like, they're just all so good. So I don't know, is it possible for you to come away and say there was one character you liked better than any others, or one that you related to the most, or just really enjoyed?
I can't remember. I've only seen the film once, obviously, but what's the character, like the main, at the beginning, there's the three of them, Andre the Giant.
Yeah. So Andre the Giant is Fezzik. Okay.
Fezzik, right.
And then Vizzini is the short little Wallace Shawn, who's like the smart guy, you know?
Yes.
And then there's Inigo Montoya.
Okay, I like all of them individually, like you said. I think Andre the Giant, a little bit. There are times whenever his dialogue is almost, it's not discernible to me. I can't understand what he's saying, but it doesn't really matter.
And it's just to jump in, that's so funny you say that, because when he speaks, his speaking voice is very hard to understand him, right? With his accent, you know, he's got that heavy accent, and plus he's just such a big man, right? So it was funny, just as a little side story, when they cast him in the movie, Rob Reiner would like have him read and didn't understand a friggin' word he was saying. Like, he's like, I can't put this guy in my movie. You can't understand what he's saying. So Rob Reiner slowly said all of his lines into a tape recorder and gave it to him and made him learn them all phonetically. And that's how he was able to learn and be able to speak, you know, the parts. And even still, it was hard to understand him, you know, as you're saying.
Well, at least there was a real effort there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
You got to give the guy credit. Like,
exactly.
I was looking up a little bit for him just as like research for the show, and like he was born in France, but like I think his parents were like Polish and like Slovakian. So like, you know, there's a lot of Eastern Europeanism in there that's going to be really hard to kind of like flesh out that, you know, to not have that overbearing accent. But the original point I was going to make was just talking about Wallace Shawn's character, Vizzini. He's so good. He's so obnoxious, but he's so perfectly obnoxious. You know what I mean? Like, and I think I always like to place myself in movies, or I like to make the movies kind of a representation of people I know in real life. I do this with books too. Like every single book I've ever read, which is a lot, is I have to make the main characters people that I know. And I know Vizzini's character. I know those people like in real life. The one line that I thought was probably my favorite line in the entire film was when he's talking about like, you ever heard of Plato? Or
that's one of my favorite lines. Yeah.
Morons like that. by calling them, you know, the greatest thinkers of, you know, the time or of the last however many hundreds of years, just by calling them morons is supposed to like elicit this strong like feeling that, oh yeah, he called them morons, so thus he must be extremely intelligent. You know what I mean? Like exactly. The guy is just so in his head. I thought it was just such a perfect like character. He's easily my favorite, but like you said, each one of them individually I think kind of stands on their own merit. So
funny, like Wallace Shawn, because originally Rob Reiner wanted Danny DeVito to play the part, right?
I could see it.
And it was so funny. Like, he wanted Danny DeVito, you know, and then and so Wallace Shawn obviously found this out, you know, during shooting. He found out that Reiner wanted Danny DeVito originally, and it made Wallace Shawn like just super like nervous, right? It just made him paranoid because he just thought, oh my God, if I don't do this right, I'm going to get fired, right? They're going to fire me. They're going to bring in Danny DeVito to finish this part. Like, because at the time, he still is, but Danny DeVito was a really big name at the time, right? You know, and Wallace Shawn was really only known for My Dinner with Andre. That was it. I mean, like, he had small parts in Manhattan and Starting Over and all that jazz, movies like that, but they were just like little bit parts, right? But Danny DeVito was like really famous from his role in Taxi, right? So, like I say, Wallace Shawn, it was just so nervous doing this. And maybe some of that nervousness came out, you know, in his performance somehow, because he was that jittery kind of like, you know, like, there's something about his performance. I agree with you. He's so funny. In every scene he's in, it's just like he's just chewing up the scenery, you know, like he's so, this little tiny short guy, like, oh.
When his character, you know, spoiler alert, obviously, whenever his character does die after drinking the poison, I was so sad.
Iocane,
Like, I really wanted him to be in the movie more, just because I thought he was, you know, he's a quirky little weirdo, but he was a really, really endearing character.
So funny when he dies and he's laughing and then just falls over. Oh yeah, it's so good. So many good characters. Going back to Andre the Giant for a second, because you mentioned him, because I just want to put things in perspective, because as a millennial, maybe you don't always understand kind of the time in which things are done. Now, to put things in perspective for you, I saw this movie in the theater. Okay, so I went to see this movie in the theater and I just loved it right from the get-go. So at the time when it came out in 1987, like, and it still is, I get, but wrestling was like the biggest thing going. WWF wrestling was like massively huge. Like, you got to think about it. This is earlier in 1987. WrestleMania 3 took place. And I'm sure even as a millennial, you probably know about a little bit about WrestleMania 3, or you've heard about it or whatever. And that, as a refresher, Yancy, WrestleMania 3 is one where Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan wrestled, right? And Hulk Hogan picked up and body slammed Andre the Giant. And it was like at the Pontiac Silverdome, and there was like, you know, 80,000 people there. It was just like the greatest thing, right? So at the time, obviously, Andre the Giant's a wrestler. But not only that, like, Andre the Giant was a bad guy. And I don't know, do they still have that in wrestling where they have like good guys and bad guys? I haven't watched it in years. I don't know if you
are asking the wrong person.
Okay. anybody that's listening, then send me a tweet at C. McBrien and let me know. Does wrestling still have good guys and bad guys? I don't know. I don't watch it. But back in those days, they had good guys and bad guys in wrestling, right? And Andre was not just a bad guy. He was like a bad guy. Like you say, he wrestled Hulk Hogan. Still the greatest wrestling event ever. And then the thing was, okay, there were these other bad guy wrestlers, and they were called the Machines, and they wore masks. There was Super Machine, and that was Bill Eadie, I think it was. And then Big Machine was Blackjack Mulligan. And so they were just, it was a gimmick, right? They were like this tag team, right? And then they brought in a third machine, Giant Machine, and it was Andre the Giant with a mask on. Like, everybody knew it was Andre the Giant. Like, I mean, he looks different than everybody other human being on the planet, right? And right. So then there's that scene in The Princess Bride when Fezzik says, he goes, "I don't trust men in masks," and it's an inside joke about his wrestling career. Like I say, at the time he saw that, and the audience laughs, you know, when we're there. But, you know, watching it now, you would have no idea what that line means. It's just some throwaway, because the movie is dropping lines like crazy, right? Mm-hmm. But that's just one. I just wanted to fill you in, just as a Gen Xer, for what it's worth. It's just a neat little
definitely would
Easter
not have
egg.
Caught that one. Wrestling is the one thing, even as a child, I never got into. My older brother, who's 2 years older than I am, and he was a lot bigger than I was. He still is, but he kind of went through that wrestling bug where he just constantly wanted to do like wrestling moves on me, and hurt me pretty bad a couple times. I'm not gonna lie, like always trying to do like just, you know, the most like insane wrestling moves and stuff. But I've always had like a very tepid relationship with wrestling. I'd mostly stay away, but.
It's too bad, because if you did like wrestling in any possible way, one of the things that I was thinking of doing sometime, you know how we go and we do our top 5 lists. I always wanted to do a top 5 list of my top 5 favorite jobbers, the jabronis, the guys that have to like go in the ring and like lose. Because from Gen X, I've got a couple guys that I think I would just be hilarious to talk with. Maybe we'll try and reach out to somebody to have them come on as a wrestling kind of guy. We can talk about jobbers. I don't know. But I mean, you probably would. Like, maybe I'd have to do it maybe sometime if you're away. If you go away on vacation, then I'll bring on a guest. If you're ever on vacation, I'll bring on a guest and we'll talk about jobbers. I'll bring on a millennial who likes wrestling. So,
this sounds like something I would gladly sit out on.
Any of our good friends that listen to this podcast and are good friends with us, shoot me a message and let me know, because if you're a millennial wrestler and you want to come in and do a show on jobbers, I'll do it with you. So I'll just put that out there. But you were mentioned about how it's sort of perfectly cast and it was all sort of perfectly thought out. So it's based on a book, obviously. This movie is based on a book by William Goldman, and it was like from 1973. And so the movie, the book was very, very popular. A lot of people liked the book, right? And so obviously a lot of people read the book and said, oh, this would make a great movie. And it took, a long time. It took, 15 years for them to make a movie out of it. So it went through many incarnations where people had bought the rights and couldn't get it made and all this. And at one point back in the 70s, they were going to make it into a movie, and they wanted to get Arnold Schwarzenegger to play Fezzik. And this is back when Schwarzenegger was just a bodybuilder. He wasn't even really much of an actor yet, right? But then Rob Reiner. Now, you are obviously familiar with who Rob Reiner is, I'm assuming, or do you not?
Yes, intimately.
Okay, so Rob Reiner, obviously, son of Carl Reiner, and but he directed This Is Spinal Tap, that I made you watch on a previous podcast, right? So Rob Reiner directed Spinal Tap, and because he directed Spinal Tap, and then right after Spinal Tap, he made another movie called The Sure Thing, and it was with John Cusack, and those two movies basically gave him a lot of goodwill with the studio. Okay, so they really liked him. They said, "Oh man, you make some pretty good movies." You know what I mean? And so as a result, the studio basically went to him and said, "Okay, for your next movie project, you can make any movie you want. You name it. You make the movie whatever you want." And so he had read the Goldman book back when he was younger, and he always wanted to make it into a movie. So that's what he did. That was his next project, was this movie. And and then so when it came, so he had a lot of time to kind of think about the movie and think about who he wanted to cast in the movie. But like we talked before about Danny DeVito, being the first choice to play one of the parts. But Mandy Patinkin, who played Inigo Montoya.
Yes.
Rob Reiner went to him originally and said, "You can play any character in the movie you want. Pick the character. Pick whatever character you want in this movie, and you can play him."
That's dangerous if he says Princess Buttercup.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been a very, very different movie, especially back in '87, right? But he ended up picking Inigo Montoya that he wanted to play because Mandy Patinkin's father had just died from, I think it was pancreatic cancer he had just recently. So he felt this really strong connection to that character, right? So then he ended up doing that. Is there any aspects of the movie that you didn't like, or that any critiques that we have of it, rather than just saying it's great?
I went back and forth because I was really distracted by the sets. Like, I was like, wow, this looks really fake, or wow, that CGI is really bad, or like the rope climbing scene where they're climbing and they're just like,
there's no CGI in it.
Legs.
I hate to break it to you. There's no CGI in the movie.
No, there's not. And to be honest with you, though, like at first it stuck out to me just because like I'm trained to look at that stuff. But then I was like, you know what? I actually kind of appreciate the fact that they're constantly towing this line between being like a fantasy and an actual movie. There's not too many elements in this movie that would be like, oh, this is an actual fantasy, outside of like the eels or
right.
Like the wizard or whatever he was,
Miracle
Billy
Max?
Crystal's character.
Miracle Max. Or what about the rodents of unusual size or anything like that?
Right. So like there are elements of like the actual that or whatever, but it wasn't so out of this world that like I was still grounded in the fact that it was a story. You know what I mean? Like it was. So I actually kind of liked the fact that they looked like sets, like Broadway sets. Like I really did enjoy that.
It's funny you mentioned that, because when they do a lot of the scenes, like when they're drinking the iocane powder and doing that whole thing, that's all outside, right? But I agree with you. The whole sword play thing on the top of the Cliffs of Insanity, when you're watching it, you're like, this is a set. You can tell it's a set. It looks like a set, exactly like you said. But it doesn't matter, because the set isn't the important part. The story is what's important, and the characters are what's important. So it's almost like if you're watching a play, on stage, you don't care. It's what the actors are doing and how they're bringing it to life. That's what matters. And so if they ever decide that they're going to remake this movie, I will protest, because it doesn't need all that stuff. It doesn't need great looking sets. They didn't have that much money, even though I just said the studio had said to Rob Reiner, hey, you can make any movie you want. He's like, okay, I want to make, The Princess Bride. I want to do Goldman's book. And okay, but we're not giving you much money to do it. So he didn't have very much of a budget. So even in the scene where Humperdinck comes out, played by the way, the great, Chris Sarandon is so amazing. We'll talk about him in a second. But so he comes out, and he didn't feel that, Rob Reiner, the director, didn't feel that the castle looked castle-y enough. So they actually put in fake turrets and stuff on it to try and make it so it does look fake. because they wanted to make it look more regal or whatever, this and that. But that's okay. It adds to the charm of the film, I think. I think it does. It does for me. But, back to Chris Sarandon for a second. So, again, to put things in perspective, like Chris Sarandon is like the ultimate bad guy, right? And he always was. He played a lot of bad guys in movies. And because I always think of him at the time, he was in another movie in the same year, and it was called Fright Night. And I know as a millennial, you know of Fright Night because they remade this stupid thing. Colin Farrell, the guy from the stupid lobster movie he made me watch. Colin Farrell redid it, right? And it was just so dumb, this movie, the remake. But the original is so good. And it's on my list of movies I'm going to make you watch one day. So you will. And you'll see Chris Sarandon in that as well. So good, man. He was just such a good bad guy. Even as a bad guy, he's just like, he's almost cartoonish, in his portrayal. But it was just so good. I don't know. So one other thing I wanted to mention too was, there's a scene at the end that they shot, and I'm so glad. This is the kind of stuff I love. I love all the behind the scenes stuff. I'm so glad that they cut it from the movie, because the original ending was a little bit different. And to me, I think it would have just ruined the movie. So they filmed a scene at the end when Peter Falk gets up. By the way, Peter Falk, before we get it, was he not great in this? The grandfather?
Oh yeah, he was incredible.
Oh man, wasn't he something else? He was, there's just something about him, his persona, his voice, his mannerisms. He's just like the perfect person to play that part.
Very believable as
perfect.
Like a grandfather who like wants his grandson's attention, and he wants his grandson to like it, but he's also like, he knows how his grandson is, and he almost has to like trick him into liking it, knowing that he'll come around to it. Yeah, it was perfect. And
it's so funny because when they originally cast him to play the part, he didn't want to do it because he goes, I'm not old enough. I think he was 60 at the time. He's like, I'm too young to be a grandfather. So he wanted to have like prosthetics put on his face to make him look older. And they said, no, just be yourself. Just be yourself. Just be you. And I'm glad that they did do that. But anyway, so the scene that they cut was at the very end, when he gets done and he says, okay, well, that's the story. It's time for me to go. And then Fred Savage says, well, if you want, you could come back tomorrow and read it to me again. And then he says, as you wish. And he leaves, right? End of the movie. But they shot another scene where then Fred Savage's character gets up out of bed and he goes over to the window and he looks out and he sees Fezzik and Inigo and Wesley and Buttercup outside on the white horses. And I'm so glad that they cut that out. I think to me that would have ruined the movie. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you feel. What do you think? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, this movie's so perfect. Like, even when you mentioned earlier about like doing like a remake, it just makes me question why. You know what I mean? Why would you like possibly change anything? And like the final product itself, it works so well. Like the idea of changing it up, I think would just really diminish it, because it's rare that I come into this with, especially with a movie that you have recommended, Chris,
mm-hmm. and
not just nitpick about all kinds of stuff. And I absolutely enjoyed this from top to bottom. So I wouldn't change a thing.
And that's one of the arguments that I make on a regular basis for not doing remakes, because I'm like, it was so good the first time. Why would you mess with it? Like, but for me, that ending, if he would have got up out of the bed, went over to the window and saw those characters outside, for me, that would have I think it would have ruined the movie, because it would have broken that wall between the stories.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have worked, because the story is a story. That's all it is. The magic of this movie is not even the story, to me, is the story of The Princess Bride. The magic of this movie is a grandfather telling a story to his grandson, and how his telling of the story, his storytelling ability, allows that story to come to life. I'm so glad they didn't go with that ending.
Yeah, I actually was going to say that the very thing that you said, that it's his ability to like tell the story is what makes it alive, like to the boy. So it's almost like a cop out that like, hey, everybody wins in the end. Like, it actually was real.
Yeah,
and
exactly. I would have been like,
it cheapens the whole imagination of everything.
Yeah, I'm glad that you agree with me. So one thing I want to just touch base on too is, you mentioned it and you brought it up, was quotes, because this movie is unbelievably quotable. Like you've mentioned up until the time when you actually finally watched this movie, just like this week, that you've heard quotes from the movie. I've dropped quotes from the movie all the time. Like I was dropping quotes, the other week on the podcast about it. And there are so many quotes. This William Goldman not only wrote the book, he also did the screenplay. It's just so unbelievably well written. There's so many good lines, and it's just like one after another, after another, after another of sharp and smart writing, I think. And when you have that kind of sharp, smart script, a really, really sharp script like that, obviously a lot of quotes are going to jump. So what are some that jump out at you? As a millennial watching this for the first time, what are some quotes that jumped off the page for you? Because I got lots.
I love the one where Princess Buttercup was dreaming, or she was having a nightmare, and the town, I don't want to say like hag, but like the one really rough looking woman is like, she's basically calling her like the queen of slime, the queen of refuse, and like she keeps going over and over. Yeah, I loved that part. I loved I wrote it down somewhere, where he says life is pain. Anyone that says anything differently is trying to sell you something.
Yes, good line.
And I was like, wow, that's powerful. Like yes. I want to tattoo that on my chest or something, but I'm not hipster enough. But there was that. There's a couple other ones that I can't seem to find in my notes, but what are some that you have?
So the most famous quotes from the movie are probably the most famous quote in the movie is "My name is Inigo Montoya," or Inigo Montoya. "You killed my father. Prepare to die." That's probably the most famous, right?
Correct.
And of course, like inconceivable. And then I love when Inigo Montoya says, "You keep using that word. I don't think that word means what you think it means."
Yeah. Conceivable.
Because he says it over and over. I think another really famous line from it is, remember when they're having the sword play and they're going on and on and on and on? Before they go into the sword play, Inigo Montoya says to Vicini, "I'm going to do him left-handed." Because he's just so good of a swordsman. He goes, "It wouldn't be fair to him if I used my right hand. I would carve him up. So I'm going to do him left-handed." Okay, whatever. So then they're doing it, and then he realizes, oh my God, this guy's really, really good. The Dread Pirate Roberts can really, use a sword. So then he says, "I've got to confess, I'm not left-handed." And then they start fighting, and he's like beating him back, and then Dread Pirate Robert goes, "I have a confession to make too. I'm not left-handed either." And it's just the whole thing turns. Like I like that line. "I'm not left-handed either."
Yep.
And of course, Miracle Max, one of my favorite. He's so good. So Miracle Max, when he's like, "Have fun storming the castle." I don't know. There's something about that line that I always like, and I use that all the time. The whole character of Miracle Max, so Billy Crystal, basically got into costume, got into his makeup, and just improvised. For like 2 hours. And so, unfortunately, a lot of his improvisation didn't make it in the movie. A lot of it was pretty salty, I think. So a lot of it didn't make it into the movie, but he just improvised like crazy. And apparently he had everybody just in stitches, like on the set. So at one point, Mandy Patinkin, Inigo Montoya, was laughing so hard that he actually bruised a rib from laughing at him, because he was just laughing so much at what Billy Crystal was doing. But and then I would say the other big quote is "as you wish." I think that's a big takeaway for. But those are like the most famous quotes from the movie, but they're not my favorite quotes. One of my it's like you, kind of like some of the smaller part. I love when they're going up to the castle, and Wesley says there's a gatekeeper there, and he says, "Give us the gate key." And the guy goes, "I don't have a gate key."
Rip his arms off.
And he goes, "Fezzik, tear his arms off." "Oh, you mean this gate key?" And I don't know. There's something when he says that line, it just makes me laugh every single time. Yeah. And then, of course, the one that you mentioned before, when Vicini says, "Have you ever heard of Plato, Aristotle, Socrates?" "Yeah." "Morons." Like that's pretty good.
Yeah. Hence my intellect. Yeah. You surely have a dizzying intellect.
Exactly. And I think one of the other ones I really like is when the Dread Pirate Roberts knocks out the giant. He knocks out Fezzik, and he says, "I don't envy the headache you're going to have when you wake up, but for now, rest well and dream of large women." And that always made me laugh too. Like there's just so many lines, like one after the other. And then, of course, I think my favorite, not to be corny or anything like that, but I love the line that he says, and they say it over and over again: "This is true love. You think this happens every day?" Mm-hmm. There's something about, I don't know. There's something about the whole thing. Like I said, it's very rarely do I find that I like, I don't want to say quote unquote chick flicks. You know what I mean? Which this kind of is in a way.
It doesn't feel like that to me at all.
Yeah,
it really
just
doesn't.
Got so much going on in it that it doesn't even qualify. But kind of like, even like the little boy in it, I find like every time I watch it, I feel like I'm that little boy too. Because it's like, I don't want to watch this kissing movie. You know, my wife wants to watch these things, but you just get sucked in, and it's just so magical from start to finish. So
I have one more question to ask you.
Of course, yeah.
But can you think of 3 other movies or 1 or 2, however many, that you feel like closely resembles this movie? So like a bunch of movies stuck out to me as I was watching this. Is like, oh wow, this was like The Princess Bride was a huge like influence on them. Can you think of any films like that?
Ooh, I've always thought this. I'm really, really anxious to hear what you're going to say, because I've always felt that this movie is so original. Like I said, going back to my original point that I made at the beginning of the show, that it incorporates a little bit of everything. It incorporates, like comedy and action and adventure and all that stuff wrapped up into one. I don't think any other movie compares to it. It doesn't have all those things going on.
No, I mean like other movies that you think pulled from this movie.
Oh, that other movies that have
used
been
this movie
influenced.
as an influence.
Oh, that have been influenced by this movie.
I can give you a couple.
Give me a couple, because I can't think of any off the top of my head. Maybe some will come to mind. Go ahead.
Okay, and I'm saying this from like an endearing standpoint because I love these films. But so Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I know that one probably came first.
It came out before this.
Yeah, so they feel very similar to me. That's a little bit more like overt comedy. Like it's, you know what I mean? It's less clever. It's more kind of in your face, but a lot of the same parallels, the same time period kind of thing. Robin Hood Men in Tights, again, kind of loosely based on the same thing.
And Carrie Elwes is in that too, isn't he?
I believe so. I can't remember. I've only seen Robin Hood Men in Tights, I think, once or twice, in my entire life.
Pretty sure Wesley's in that movie.
And the third one is Shrek. I felt,
I can see that now you mentioned
I love Shrek. I just thought like I said, the humor is there. There's actually a lot going on with Shrek where thematically, like, it makes it a incredibly rewatchable film. Like, it's not even one of my favorite films, but every time it's on, I will rewatch it. And like, I could see it being like that with this movie, where it's such a simple story, but it's also like a really unique story. And there's just so much clever, like, even as you're mentioning like quotes and stuff like that, like I kind of heard them while I was watching the movie, but just hearing you like replay them back to me, it's like, there are things about this movie that I missed, and I want to jump back into it and rewatch it. But can you think of any other movies like that obviously pulled this movie as like an influence or a reference?
No, nothing comes to mind. I'm thinking of it as you're mentioning those movies, and I agree that I think those ones did, with the exception of Monty Python, because that came out before. But no, nothing like really jumps out at me.
That's fair.
Yeah, like I can't think of anything that kind of pulled through. I think the problem is that if you homage this movie in any way, it's just so obvious that you are, that maybe that's why a lot of people don't. I don't know. That's just my thought. I haven't seen anything else that's been quite like it, or that's even reminded me of it a whole lot. But the ones that you give are good, though.
Okay.
But anyway, so you want to? So before we go on to any trivia, do you want to give it a rating out of 10? What would you say?
So it's original, it's entertaining, it's thoughtful, it's funny. The casting is amazing. It's rewatchable for sure. It's just super rewatchable. I think even though I've only seen it once, I want to watch it again.
Yeah, you can tell, like, and that's what I always mention over and over again, on this show about all those movies that are rewatchable. To me, yeah, I could watch this movie 100,000 times. Like, I can watch it over and over again.
So I understand why this is such a cult classic, why I've heard it referenced so many times. Like, I have friends that have Princess Bride tattoos, and they're constantly quoting this stuff, whatever. Like, I'm going to give it like a really solid 9, like a 9.0. Yeah. It is just a really charming, endearing movie that, like you said, it's kind of something for everybody, like adults, kids, everything like that. I can't see myself as a child not enjoying this. I couldn't see myself growing out of this if I grew up with it. I've never seen it before. We did the show, whatever, but just a really, really good movie. So I'll give it like a really solid 9. For the first time in the history of the podcast, 71 episodes, I agree with you 100%, and I also give it a 9. Look at us, Chris.
We tie on that one. All right.
Is this what it takes for you to be proud of me?
Yeah, well, like I said, if you would have come into this with this movie and said, I didn't like this movie, we were breaking up. It's over. But, you redeemed yourself because you love this movie. Again, how can you not like the movie? I mean, it's just so incredibly likable. That's the whole point of the film, right? So, okay, time now to have some
fun with Yancy.
Okay, it's over to you, my friend. I nominated this movie, so now I guess you got to put me on the chopping block here and give me some trivia. So, what do you got?
Okay, per the usual, you knocked out a lot of them by just talking about the film. Obviously, you know a lot. That's not a secret. That's well established in like the history of the show. Like Chris knows a lot about these movies, and to his credit, like he actually goes in and like researches them and like learns about them and knows links between different movies and actors and directors and stuff. So well done on your part. So first question, it's a really easy one. What year was The Princess Bride released?
In 1987.
And it was based off of the book.
Yep.
What year was the book released?
The book came out in 1973.
Okay, I thought you might not get the book. I knew you'd definitely get the movie, obviously, but so well done. Okay, so William Goldman, he won 2 Oscars for Best Writing. Can you name the 2 films that he won them for? Obviously, he directed this film as well.
Man, just trying to think with Butch Cassidy and All the President's Men. I'll go with those 2.
Yep, you nailed it.
Yes.
2 for 2.
Oh,
I think I
yeah.
said directed. I think I just meant wrote.
No,
He
I think you said writing. You said writing.
Okay.
So
sorry. All right. So Robin Wright, the lovely, talented Robin Wright, can you name the year in which she was born? And I will give you a hint. I reference my parents a lot in this show. This is the same year that they were born. It is also the year that the shoe Vans first was created. What is
nice.
the year?
Well, she was 21 when she made this in 1987, so that would put her back to 1966.
Well done.
Ooh.
Very well. Math is good. Okay. So let me ask you. We talked about Rob Reiner a little bit.
Yes. Oh, Rob
that guy
Reiner.
that guy has some work, man. You want to talk about just how many different things he's a part of as an actor, a director, a writer. Just has his hands in all kinds of different projects. Really impressive. Can you name the film that he directed before The Princess Bride and also after The Princess Bride? The 2 films immediately sandwiching The Princess Bride.
So I will say, would Stand By Me?
Stand By Me is one.
Yeah, Stand By Me came out before because I mentioned The Sure Thing in Spinal Tap, but he did Stand By Me, and right after it, I think he did Misery, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
It's actually When Harry Met Sally.
When Harry Met Sally, of course.
Yeah.
Oh,
Misery
man.
was right there too, though, as I looked it up.
Yes.
I think you were 1 film off, but yes.
So close.
Still pretty impressive, though. Still have credit.
Yeah.
Okay, so the quote, his eyes are like the sea after a storm. That's what she references talking about her love. I actually forgot his name too. Was it Wesley?
Wesley, yep. Wesley, like West, and then Lee.
Wesley,
Wesley,
right?
yep.
So once again, she says his eyes are like the sea after a storm. That is a reference to what? In real life?
I don't know.
It is actually a painting by the same name by the Irish painter Francis Darby that was created in 1824.
Oh, how can I not know that?
I assumed, honestly, Chris, I assumed that you would have looked it up.
No.
You know how many times I write down questions and I'm like, surely he won't get this. And then surely
and then boom, I drop it. Yeah.
Okay, I got another one about Andre the Giant.
Oh, sure, Andre the Giant.
So this is tangential to the actual movie itself because I've had to become more creative with these. If I'm just reading off trivia and stuff online, you're going to get it if it's directly relating to the movie. But Andre the Giant, he played a pivotal part in this. Obviously, you mentioned him wrestling against Hulk Hogan. Very very famous wrestler. Unfortunately, he died when he was I think 47 or 48.
Yeah.
He was, however, inducted into the World Wrestling Entertainment Hall of Fame. Can you name the year that he was inducted into said Hall of Fame?
I'll guess the same year he died. I'll say 93.
It was 1993.
Oh, yes! I had to take a guess on that one. That's hilarious.
Okay. Can you name the actor who played the albino?
Oh, was it Robbie Coltrane?
It was Mel Smith.
Oh, Mel Smith. Oh,
Mel
so close.
Smith.
Oh,
yeah.
So I was thinking Robbie Coltrane.
And weirdly enough, I didn't mention this. I know we're in trivia now, but I did not realize at the time that it was Billy Crystal that played the Miracle guy.
It was him and Carol Kane in those roles. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. One other thing I just want to mention, if I could just jump in for a second, because we didn't mention it. And I think this is something that's lost in this movie because it happens during the credits, is the song Storybook Love that's done by Willie.
The soundtrack.
It's so good. So Willie DeVille and Mark Knopfler, the guitar player from Dire Straits, obviously, they teamed up and they did this song, Storybook Love, at the end. It was up for an Oscar for Best Song. Mm-hmm. Didn't win because I've had the time of my life from Dirty Dancing, kind of swept that one. But it came out the same year, so you're not going to beat it, right? But I just and that song, like elements and the melody of that song are woven as an instrumental throughout the movie, and that song is really, really good. So anybody that wants to, you just go and you can find it on YouTube or something like that. But Storybook Love, the song by Willie DeVille and Mark Knopfler, it's really, really, really good.
I did not know that he had a part in this. Yep. I will say this: Dire Straits, criminally underrated. Sultans of Swing, probably one of the greatest guitar songs of all time. I don't know how you feel about that.
I agree with you 100%.
And you know what's weird? I actually wrote that in my notes too, talking about, I know we're running super long, but
No, it's okay.
I even wrote about the music to it. It sounds like 16-bit, like something you would hear on like the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Like that's what the music sounded like to me. It was like, I really enjoyed it. I just thought it was like very like video gamey, like fairy tale, almost like Zelda-ish. You know what I mean? I just thought it worked really, really well. But I just kind of wanted to mention that. Let me see if I have any other trivia questions real quick you haven't answered. The 2 rival kingdoms in the movie, can you name them?
Gilder and... Oh, the other one escapes me. I just always think of Gilder.
I know you know it. It's Florin.
Florin. Yes.
You would have gotten there for sure.
Yeah.
It was actually the name of 2 former Dutch currencies, the florin and the gulden.
That's so cool.
Can you name the powder that was the fictional poison that was, used inside the film? Can you name the name of the poison?
Well, being as the Dread Pirate Roberts, spent years building up an immunity to it, I should know that it's iocane powder.
Iocane, correct,
yes.
Which is not real.
No,
but.
it's make believe.
I think that does it, Chris. I had a lot more of these. Can you name any famous actress that auditioned or at least put her name in for Princess Buttercup? There are 3 big names that you might be able to get.
I'm just trying to think. Would like Meg Ryan be one?
Meg Ryan is one.
Oh, good. So there we go. I'm just trying to think of any because again, like at the time, Robin Wright was unknown. She was an unknown actress, right? But so was Carrie Elwes. I don't know. Meg Ryan. I can't think of anybody else.
Meg Ryan was a fantastic guest. Courtney Cox was another that auditioned for the role.
Okay, very cool.
And they also said Uma Thurman, but she was turned out immediately because they said she was too exotic looking. So apparently they were looking for a very, Aryan, blonde hair, blue eyed,
right.
Like your typical princess, whatever. But I thought that was pretty interesting. But very nice job as always. You kind of outclass me when it comes to the trivias, and the streak continues. So nice job.
And just one thing too on the title, because it's a very interesting title, The Princess Bride. What an interesting thing. You know where that came from? William Goldman, when he was writing the book, he said to his 2 daughters, "What should I write my next book on?" And his one daughter said, "You should write it on a princess," and the other one said, "You should write it on a bride." So he said, "I'll call it The Princess Bride. I'll do both." And
simple enough.
Very simple, and wrote the book. But definitely a good movie. I'm really glad. So I just got thinking about something, and we'll wrap it up with this. When you were mentioning about, when I mentioned Mark Knopfler, and you were like, Dire Straits, such a great guitar song. How about this? Next week, we got to do a top 5 list. So how about this? Top 5 guitar solos of all time. What do you think?
Guitar solos or
guitar solos?
songs?
Guitar solos.
Wow, that's going to take a lot of work. I love it, though.
Right? Because that song, because as soon as you mentioned it, I thought, oh my God, that is such a good guitar song. It's got such a great solo in it. Just so, he's just got so much feeling going on in that song. And I'm trying to think, that's got to be one of the best guitar solos I think I've ever heard. So now I'm thinking, I think we should do guitar solos. What do you think?
I am so down for a music-centric
We
podcast.
need to do music. I know you like music, so let's do it. All right? So, so as I mentioned at the top of the show, you want to reach us on Twitter, @CMcBrien, @Yancy Eaton, popgoesyourworld.com for all of our contact information. On behalf of Yancy Eaton, this is Chris McBrien saying thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thank you for listening to the Pop Goes Your World podcast. Continue the conversation on Twitter @CMcBrien or @Yancy Eaton. Please consider leaving a review for the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.